Listen, just one more thing.
Hello there. Welcome to my review of episode 7 of Columbo season 2, The Most Dangerous Match. First broadcast on March the 4th, 1973 on NBC. Written once again by Jackson Gillis and directed by returning director Edward M. Abrams. The episode begins with a dream sequence. This is indicated by the use of a headache-inducing kaleidoscope special effect. A man is running around a giant chessboard being attacked by the giant pieces. He awakes falling out of bed. This is Emmett Clayton, played by Laurence Harvey. Harvey was born Zvi Moshe Skaikny on the 1st of October 1928 in Lithuania. He grew up in South Africa and at 15 successfully auditioned for the entertainment unit of the South African Army, approved by Sid James, who managed the unit. Eventually he moved to the UK, changed his name to Laurence Harvey upon gaining his first film role in House of Darkness in 1948. He gained experience as a supporting actor in many British films over this period, as well as appearing on stage and TV. He finally found international fame with a well-regarded performance in the 1959 film Room at the Top. This led to roles in The Alamo with John Wayne and Butterfield 8 with Elizabeth Taylor. Harvey continued to split his time between the UK and Hollywood. In 1962 he was cast in the career-defining role as Captain Raymond Shaw in The Manchurian Candidate. He continued to act in film, television and on stage, but never quite achieved the career heights of The Manchurian Candidate over the next decade, which included this role in Columbo. But as a heavy smoker and drinker, he had been diagnosed with stomach cancer and died on the 25th of November 1973 at the age of 45. His daughter was bounty hunter Domino Harvey, of whom the Keira Knightley film Domino was based. Clayton is deaf, so puts in his hearing aid, gets dressed and meets the press for an interview about his upcoming chess match. He's a chess grandmaster about to face tough opponent Tomlin Dudek. There is some question as to whether he has the ability to beat Dudek. Dudek then appears at the other side of the hotel and the press rush to speak to him. I don't know if chess really was this big in the 70s, but I'm willing to go with it for the sake of the plot and establishing the characters. Dudek's assistant appears to know Clayton and she hates him. When she's gone, Dudek makes his way out of the hotel and sneaks off to a French restaurant, pursued by Clayton. We find out Dudek's assistant Linda is Clayton's ex-fiancée, but this plot thread is left fairly underdeveloped. Maybe if they'd cast Dudek slightly younger and had him be the one who stole Linda away, or at the very least have Clayton believe that, we might have got a more rounded character. As they converse, Dudek enjoys escargot against his doctor's dietary advice, and an impromptu chess game begins with them using the checkerboard tablecloth and various utensils as the board and pieces. After an extended period with the restaurant wanting to close, Dudek wins the match and Clayton says he lost because he can't concentrate. The two men return to the hotel and sneak in via the back so Dudek won't be seen by his handler, Berozski. Dudek's handler turns up at Clayton's room looking for Dudek and Clayton denies seeing him, which is a lie as they are continuing their chess games in Clayton's room. Dudek ends up winning again and tries to console Clayton, but Clayton is haunted by his nightmare from the night before. In an unusual move, we are introduced to Columbo before we see the murder. He's playing checkers with his vet, who is looking after Dog. He tells the vet he was called out to search for a missing chess player, but was then called off the search when the chess player turned up. Back to Clayton, who has formulated a plan to get rid of Dudek. He books a flight for Dudek, impersonating him on the phone, and then calls Dudek, asking to meet him. Tomlin Dudek is played by Jack Kruschen. Kruschen was born on the 20th of March 1922 in Winnipeg, Canada. He began working at a radio station at age 16 and became an on-air performer. This was interrupted by World War II, where he served in the armed forces on Forces Radio. Returning to radio drama after the war, he then moved into film and television as a character actor, receiving an Oscar nomination for his supporting role as Dr. Dreyfus in The Apartment. He appeared in hundreds of film and TV roles, including films such as McLintock, the original War of the Worlds, and Cape Fear, and TV shows ranging from Batman to Webster, where he had a recurring role. He died on April 2nd, 2002. He was 80. When Dudek leaves his room, he lets the maid in to clean, and Clayton appears and slips some tape on the lock so he can re-enter the room, which he does as soon as the maid leaves. Packing up Dudek's belongings, I'm not sure this quite works, as Clayton makes the initial call from the lobby and would have to have timed it to perfection with the maid entering the room so he could block the lock, and it seems a little unlikely. Clayton meets with Dudek at the rear of the hotel and makes up a story about a girl from Dudek's country he wants to break up with, getting Dudek to write a breakup note in his native tongue about having to leave her. He then shoves Dudek into the industrial garbage compactor. Columbo is investigating the scene of Dudek's accident. It's been set out to look like Dudek was running away and, while fleeing, fell into the machine. Berozski is convinced it was no accident, as Dudek had no reason to run away. Berozski is played by Lloyd Bochner, perhaps best known for the famous To Serve Man episode of The Twilight Zone, parodied in the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror episode, and he was also the father of Hart Bochner, famous for playing Alice in Die Hard.
Hans, Bobby, I'm your white knight.
Clayton arrives as Columbo is inspecting the note, with Berozski translating. At this point, Columbo seems convinced, but Linda certainly isn't. Dudek wasn't at all scared by Clayton. It's also revealed that Dudek isn't dead. He's critically injured but survived. Clayton is shaken by this revelation but retains his composure. Columbo then investigates Dudek's room, wonders about Dudek's eating habits and how Dudek had a toothbrush in his bag but wore dentures. It turns out that it's the toothbrush of Dudek's dietitian, who he had been sharing rooms with. So it couldn't have been packed by Dudek, and this was no accident. Clayton goes to see Dudek at the hospital, but he's still in surgery and is critical. There he speaks to Linda and acts very concerned, but he's able to spy a list of Dudek's drug regime, which he will need after he's out of surgery. When Linda is gone, Clayton makes a note of all the medicine he needs, but Columbo turns up and interrupts him. Clayton tries to brush off Columbo, but the lieutenant persists. With Dudek alive, Clayton is going to have to work hard to try and get away with this. Columbo drives Clayton to his hotel and wonders why Dudek didn't use his own stationery to write the note, pack the wrong toothbrush, and why he didn't sign the note. Clayton attempts to make excuses. Columbo then takes Clayton not to his hotel, but to the French restaurant, where he is identified by the waiter. Clayton is fully aware of what Columbo is up to here. Columbo also wonders why Dudek didn't pack his own chess set if he was planning to run away. Clayton says it couldn't possibly be him who's responsible, as he would have known that Dudek would take his chess set with him. Clayton then cleverly asks the waiter who won their game, but the waiter doesn't know, allowing Clayton to claim that he won, which apparently devastated Dudek. Columbo has a call which explains that he's recovered and is moving. Clayton looks terrified until Columbo tells him it's his dog that is doing well, and that was a call from his vet. This is a nice trick of Columbo's to gauge Clayton's response, and I think it cements Columbo's suspicions about Clayton being the attempted murderer. Columbo has found Dudek's chess game journal, and while there aren't names, it records the restaurant match where White won. Columbo knows Dudek used the salt and Clayton used the pepper, but Clayton attempts to claim that he was playing as White. Clayton then sneaks back into Dudek's room, and we get a goof as we see the reflection of a man having a sit down in the room Clayton walks past. This sort of dissolves the tension of Linda and the dietitian returning just as Clayton is replacing one of Dudek's vital medicines. At the hospital, Columbo arrives as they are trying to revive Dudek, but it's too late. Dudek is now dead, and Columbo wants all the medicines he was administered analysed, but they've been destroyed. Columbo finds out Clayton saw Linda's list of medicines. He then goes to the original scene of the crime, along with Dog, and thanks to Dog, he finds out the garbage compactor shuts down if anything too large goes in it and has to be manually restarted. Columbo takes this information to Clayton while he's playing a multi-game exhibition match. He questions Clayton about the restaurant game and challenges him about memorising the medications, Clayton's pen being the one used to write Dudek's note, and he manages to distract Clayton enough to lose one of his chess games, just as Clayton is telling Columbo he is too clever to make mistakes. Columbo then takes Clayton to the compactor, and as Clayton removes his hearing aid, the machine is shut off, but Clayton doesn't know that without his hearing aid in, a mistake only he could have made. I was not a fan of this episode before this review, and I'm still not a fan having rewatched it. I don't like the effects used for the dream sequence, but I can overlook that if I enjoy the rest of the story, but I just don't. The subject matter of chess is always a struggle, as it can potentially be very dull, and I don't think this episode does anything to dispel that. What the setup should be is Columbo and Clayton pitting wits against each other like a chess match, with each man trying to think a few steps ahead of the other, the winner being the one who is able to outthink and anticipate what his opponent will do. But we don't get any sense of that. It spends far too long setting up the crime, and far too little time setting up the character. We know Clayton is tortured by the idea that Dudek is a better player than him, but I'd wish they'd shown that in a cleverer way than giving him a dream sequence. We never get to see Clayton be that good at chess, so watching him worry about being beaten feels a bit hollow. I would have preferred to see a match between the two men, set up perhaps a year earlier, where we see them compete as a commentator informs us of just how good Clayton is, and how Dudek has only recently come onto the international scene, having been a champion in his own country, but not outside of it, due to it being an isolationist country. We could then hear the commentator talk about how it looks as if he has Clayton on the ropes, but not completely defeated just yet, before Dudek collapses and the game is called off. Then have the opening where a journalist asks Clayton about the rematch after Dudek's recovery from health issues, and how he nearly beat Clayton last time, with Clayton dismissing that and suggesting that he would have been triumphant had the game concluded. Then have the opening where journalists ask Clayton about the rematch after Dudek has recovered from his health issues and how he nearly beat Clayton, with Clayton dismissing that and suggesting he would have been triumphant if the game had concluded, while privately he knows this isn't true. Show him playing multiple matches, as we see later on, but being completely successful with it, just to set up what is going to happen when Columbo gets into his head. Show his obsession with chess a little more. If he is that driven by the game, we don't really get a sense of it in the episode. Show him being a genius in the same way we see Columbo being a genius. All we actually see is him making a series of blunders that puts and keeps Columbo on his trail. Also, the murder itself isn't nearly as clever as it should be. We've seen some very clever murders, both thought out well in advance and on spur of the moment. This seems to be spur of the moment, but also so badly planned that it fails at every point. He should have been able to leave a better false trail and come up with a better plot than just knock a guy into a garbage compactor that he saw only moments earlier. Then there are the flaws in the logic of the attempted murder itself. The fall into the machine almost kills Dudek. But later on, the guy who operates the machine says that the failsafe ensures that you wouldn't be injured at all if you fell in. They make the character of Clayton deaf, so he won't hear that the machine is switched off, but that doesn't really work, as the machine has several other ways of indicating it has stopped, that this supposed chess genius completely missed. The way the clues are all put together by Columbo are all well done, and how Columbo works out what happened all makes sense, but that's about the only element that does work. Clayton doesn't come across as particularly clever or particularly evil, but is also completely unsympathetic. I feel like he would have been a better character had he been more friendly and helpful with Columbo, perhaps teaching him chess, culminating in Columbo beating him as he distracts him by unravelling his entire scheme, and if the scheme itself had been cleverer. Dudek was a diabetic, yet rather than give him an insulin or sugar overdose, Clayton just shoves him into a piece of industrial machinery and immediately walks away, hoping for the best. It's not unwatchable. There are a few clever moments and a few funny moments, but overall it's just so dull. So for that reason, I'm giving it 1 out of 5. Thank you. Goodbye.